Hi, fourth grade, and welcome back to Math with Mr. G. Today we're going to be continuing our work in math. Today we're going to be going over a new topic, which is rounding. Our objective today, which is based off the standard NBTA3, is we're using place value understanding to round multi-digit whole numbers to any place. So rounding is one of those very, very useful parts of math that we learn in fourth grade. Rounding is something that you can do in every part of your life. For instance, if I look in my pocket and I have, let's say, $18 and some change, I might round that up to, I have about $20, right? This will give me a good range for understanding how much I can spend or how little I have in a number of different situations and contexts. But there is a very specific process to rounding that we're going to start going over today, and we're going to continue for the next couple of days. I have a handy little chart here on the left that you're going to see in the next couple of videos, because this is a really, really simple step-by-step method to understand rounding and the process for it. We're then going to follow up and we're going to practice rounding in a number of contexts and situations. So let's get started. So my rounding rules, step one. I'm going to find the rounding place. So I have 125 here, and let's say I've asked you to round to the tens place, so ones, tens. Now that we found it, we want to circle that. This is a really good practice for beginning your rounding, is to really be able to hone in on exactly what you're looking at, especially in larger numbers. If you have a lot of place values, you can get kind of confused if you're looking at the larger number and you might miss the spot that you're rounding to. So we're going to, step two, we're going to go next door. I don't mean, go to your neighbor's house and knock on the door. I mean next door as in the place values. We're going to go next door to the right. We're going to underline that digit. For in this instance, we're going to underline the 5 in the ones place. Step three, we're going to ask ourselves, is this number that we've underlined the next door number, not the circle number, the next door underlined number, so in this case we're 5. We're going to ask if this number is 4 or less, or we're going to ask if it's 5 or more, one or the other. So if it's 4 or less, I'm going to let it rest, is what we say. So what that means is you're going to not round this number up. You're actually going to be turning this number into a 0. Okay? And we're going to be letting this 2 rest, is what it refers to. The 5 or more, if this number is 5 or more, which in this case it is, we're still going to turn this number into a 0, but we're now going to raise the score. Get how it rhymes? 5 or more, raise the score. We're going to raise the score for the circle number, the 2. We're going to go up 1 value to 30, to 3. So we have essentially taken 125, and through these steps, we've rounded up to 130. 125 is closer to 130 than it is 120 in the tens place. Like all things with math, this is something that takes practice. This is something that is going to involve a lot of repetition over the next couple of days. You're probably going to want to rewatch this video and the subsequent videos after this and to recheck these rules. All right, so here's an example. I have a number line, and I want to find the number 28 on the number line and label it. So I'll notice that I have 20 to 30 here, and it goes up by ones. So I have 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, just to check. So now I'm going to find 28, 26, 27, 28. So I have 28 right here. And it's asking, is 28 closer to 20 or 30? Well, even without counting numbers over, we can see that 28 is a lot closer to 30. And if we want to be specific, it's 2 numbers closer to 30, and it's 8 numbers away from 20. So it's now asking, what is 28 rounded to the nearest 10? So let's look at 28. I'm going to write it here. I'm rounding it to 10, so I'm going to circle my 2, look next door, underline my 8, and I ask myself, is this 4 or less or 5 or more? I know 8 is 5 or more, so that means I'm going to up the score. So this 2 now becomes use my blue here. This 2 now becomes a 3, and my 8, it becomes a 0. Every number after the rounded place value becomes 0, so in this case, just the ones place becomes a 0. So round to the nearest 10 is 30, which coincidentally is, of course, the number that is closing to here. Let's look at another example with our 30 here. I'm going to just scroll down just a hair. Perfect. Okay, is 13 closer to 10 or 20? So let me find 13 on the number line and label it. 11, 12, 13. Is it closer to 10 or 20? Just looking at this very simply, I don't have to count necessarily, but I could if I want to. This is much closer to 10. So what is 13 rounded to the nearest 10? Let's try it. So I have 13 here. I'm going to circle the tens place because that's what I'm rounding to. I'm going to look next door, my ones place, and look at this 3. Is this 3 4 or less or 5 or more? I know that 3 is 4 or less, so I'm going to let this 1 rest. It's going to stay the same. It's going to be a 1. Let's do this in blue. It's going to stay a 1. And as always, the number that we looked at, and every number after that, if this were a longer number, would be increased to 0. Or decreased, I'm sorry, to 0. So 13 to the nearest 10 is 10. Let's look at a few more examples. So I'm going to round these 3 numbers to their hundreds place. So we're going to increase the value that we're rounding to by just 1, from tens to hundreds, to see the different ways that rounding affects larger numbers. So I'm going to use my red here. I'm rounding to the hundreds place. I'm going to circle this 2. And I'll look next door to this 6. Okay. So is 6, and I'm looking at just the 6. I don't care about this 4. I'm looking at just the number next door, not 2 houses down next door. Is my 6 4 or less or 5 or more? I know 6 is actually greater than 5, so this is 5 or more. So I'm going to raise the score. So this 2 in my hundreds place now becomes a 3. And every number after it becomes a 0. I've got 1, 2 numbers after it, so I have 2 zeros. 264 rounded to the hundreds place is 300. Next number I have here is 545. I'm going to round that to the hundreds place as well. I'm going to start with my hundreds place, circle it, look next door. Great. So is 4 4 or less or 5 or more? It's 4 or less. So my 5 I let rest. It stays a 5. I have 1 2 numbers after it, so I have 1 2 zeros. Now I'm going to do the same thing here with my 350. I'm going to circle the hundreds place, look next door. So 5, which I'm looking at, is it 4 or less or 5 or more? It's 5 or more. So this 3, I'm going to raise the score. It's now going to become a 4. And I'm only, if you've noticed, only going up by 1. I'm not going up to 2. This isn't becoming 500. It's going up to 4. 1 2 zeros, 400. All right, let's make this a little trickier. Let's now go to the thousands. Exact same method. I know we're increasing that place value even just 1 more, but the method remains exactly the same steps every time. So I'm going to round to the thousands. I'm going to circle my thousands place, which is a 9. I'm going to look next door, which is a 0. 0, is it 4 or less or 5 or more? It's 4 or less. So my 9, I let rest, stays a 9, and I have 1 2 3 numbers after it, so I have 1 2 3 zeros. So 9,000. Let's do the same thing with our 7,500. So I'm rounding a thousands place. I have a 7 here. I'm going to underline my 5, looking next door. Is 5 4 or less or 5 or more? It's 5 or more. So I'm going to raise the score of that 7, that thousands place, by 1, going up. It's now an 8, and I have 1 2 3 numbers after it, so I have 1 2 3 zeros, 8,000. Let's look at our next example. 4,467. I'm going to circle my thousands place, look next door. So next door I have a 4. And is that 4 or less or 5 or more? It's 4 or less. So I'm going to let it rest. I'm going to let this thousands place rest. And it stays a 4. I have 1 2 3 numbers after it. They all become zeros. So that's very much just the process you have to follow. You can even rewind this video and pause it at that rules section when you're working on your assessment from today. Now, as always, if you've watched this video to the end, you'll be ready for the assessment for next time. Feel free to rewatch this, and good luck, and I will see your work tomorrow.